Okay, so with that, I'm really excited to have Yixuan Qiu with us. So when I invited him, he was at Carnegie Mellon, or I thought he was, but he still agreed to do to present at our group. He's now in Shanghai at the Shanghai University of Finance and Economics. So it's super early there for him. So it's very kind of him to share these very interesting packages with us today. His research is in machine learning, but he's also just a very prolific R developer. So I reached out to him as saying, basically whatever he wanted to talk about be fine. And so I was most interested in Showtext. And so I got lucky that that's one of the ones he chose. With that, I'll let Yixuan share a screen and take off. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, John. Let me first share my screen. Can you see the screen now? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah, since, thanks for the warm invitation. And since I'm also a first timer, just give you a quick introduction about myself. So right now I'm a assistant professor in statistics at Shanghai University of Finance and Economics in China. And before my current position, I was doing a postdoc at Carnegie Mellon University. I graduated from Prettier University in statistics in 2018. And in my part-time, I also wrote some R packages, and also like today, I'm going to introduce two of them. And so let's get started. And as you can see in the title, the topic today is actually very casual. It's about making nice plots and documents. And I'm going to introduce these two packages. The one is Showtext and the other is Prettydoc. So I think let's get started with a very simple example. This is a very typical data visualization, and I saw this example in a blog post. So it's about visualizing the average ratings of horror movies across the years in IMDb. And so there is nothing wrong about this plot, but later you will see that if we change a little bit, then we may have a more interesting plot than this one. So let's move on. So as you can see that if I changed the fonts about the title and the axis labels a little bit, then you will see that like these kind of fonts remind you about the horror movie, right? So this means that like if you change some elements of the plots, for example, the fonts, and that will make you make the plots more interesting because it's closer to the context of this visualization. And you may imagine that this may be a trivial task, like when you do some word processing software like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. Like changing the fonts is a very trivial task. But in fact, in R, that was not that easy. And there are several reasons behind that. So the first is that like in R, we have many different graphics devices. Like there's a device for Windows, for X11, for Mac OS, and many others like PNG, PDF. And if you want to specify the fonts for one device, you have to use some specific functions. And here I just listed a few of them. And you can see that like for each one of the device, you have a separate function to register these fonts. And what's even worse is that when you want to change the fonts in PDF devices, then you don't have many choices. And if you run this command in PDF, and that's basically the fonts you can do with a PDF file. However, the PDF device does not support the TTF or OTF fonts. And those are the formats that you typically see in your system or you see on the internet. So it means that many of the popular fonts for many of the popular fonts, you cannot directly use them in PDF, even if there are some extension packages to do that, but that was not very easy. And also, if you want to share this plot to others, and the other people does not have the font installed in the system, you have to embed those fonts into the PDF file. And that requires some external software, such as the Ghost script. And that's an additional step in making the plots. So that was not very easy. And the other problem with the fonts in our plots is that when you're referring to a font, that is usually a name of the font. But sometimes the font names will cause some ambiguity. So it's just a name, but what is really this font is not clear. And that will cause some reproducibility problems. Because if you want others to run your code, you have to guarantee that the other people have already installed the same fonts as you. But sometimes that is not possible. So this is our new solution with the package Showtext. So here I can just quickly show this code. Like so, for example, I first download a font file from the internet, or you can get the font file from any other place. So it's a TTF file. I download it from some website, and then what I do is that I first register this font with the function font add, and then I add another font from Google. There's a function called font add Google, and that name is Taro Road. And then I run this command, the Showtext auto. So, and that's it. So once I register these two fonts, the first is called SKCD, and the other is called Taro Road. I can just use them. Oh, sorry. So do I have to? Oh, okay. So it's just some chance. So once I have registered these two fonts, I can just use them freely in any familiar R code. For example, in a pie chart, I can specify the family name as XKCD, and that is exactly the font I register right now. And also, like I can use a different font in the title, and I specify the family parameter. And then using these commands, I can make the plot below. So what's happening here? As you can see that all the plotting functions are familiar. It's just the usual R code that you make a plot. But what's different are some, just a few core functions in Showtext. Like the first one is you add a local font to the R system. So this function has several parameters. The first parameter is called family, and that is the name you give to that font and that you want to use in R. And the second is you give the location of the font file. So in Showtext, you do not specify the font using its name because as I have explained, the name sometimes has ambiguity, but you give the location to the font file. And that font file contains all the characters of that font. So that is the real object that contains the glyph information. And you can specify more variants of the font. For example, if you have the bold styles or the italic styles, you can specify the font file for those styles also. And there is another very convenient function. That is, you can directly grab the font from the Google Fonts. And that is a database of, I think, thousands of free fonts that you can directly use. So you simply give the name to that function, and it will download all the necessary files, font files from Google. And then you can use it in your R plots. So after you have registered those fonts, you just need to call one function, the Showtext auto, and then the Showtext will do everything for you. So you can just draw any plots, either like using the base plot or using the ggplot. You just need to use the font family that you have just registered, and you can use the plotting functions as usual. And there's one more function that you probably need to use. That is some setting the options of Showtext, for example, the DPI. So this is usually the case if you make some bitmap plots, and you have to make the options aligned with your graphics device. So these are all you need to use the Showtext, and you just need to like find a font file, or you find a font in Google Fonts. Then you call the Showtext auto function, and you can make any plots and change the fonts as you wish. So I think the next natural question is how or where we can find those fonts that we want. Oh, so let me first skip that slide. So if you want to find some good fonts, there are many choices. The first is that probably you don't know, but you have already installed a lot of fonts in your local machine. So the Showtext package provides you a convenient function, the font files, so that it will list all the fonts in the standard directory, and you can look at it will return a data frame, and that will contain the font name and the font file and some other information. So probably you can already find a very good font in your local machine. And the other choices are the Google fonts. And as I mentioned, it contains many different fonts free of charge. So you can scan through this database, and if you want to use it, just record its name and call the function font at Google in Showtext. And also there are some other websites that host some font files, and here just I list a few of them, or you can just search the fonts in Google, and you can download them to your local machine and then add those fonts in R. So why the Showtext works? And as I mentioned that, like in R, it was pretty hard to use fonts, to change fonts in plots. And what Showtext does is that we replace some of the built-in functions to render the text. So a normal path to draw the text in R is that, for example, I call an R function text, and by default, using the R's own built-in graphics device, it will call some internal C functions to draw that text. But that text has limited support for fonts. And what we do right now is that I replace the internal text function by some new functions written in the Showtext package. And what we do is that, so because we have already registered the font files, so if the Showtext is enabled, we will first search for the font database and extract the necessary information to render that text. And we know that like in R, we have two kinds of graphics device. One is the vector graphics, the other is the bitmap graphics. So like for different devices, we will use two different versions. So if we detect that the current graphics device is a bitmap, then we will render those text into some raster images. And then we will call the R's built-in raster function to render that text into your plot area. Otherwise, if your graphics device is a vector graphics, then we will convert the character, we will convert the text to some polygons, and we will use other built-in function, the path function, to draw those text. So basically, what Showtext does is that it will convert every text into either a bitmap or a polygon, so that like any people who view this plot does not need to install that font, because this font has already been converted to some device independent and system independent formats. But there is one caveat of this solution. That's because when you use the Showtext to draw the text, you have already lost the information of this text. So, for example, if you create a PDF file using Showtext, and it does not contain those text information, so you can no longer select those text or search those text on internet. And this is one caveat, because I think that's the price you have to pay. Because if you want to make the plots viewable, no matter like from what system or from what device, you have to make the content readable. And in that case, you have to convert it either in the bitmap or in a vector graphics, and that loses the text information. So, but at the end of this talk, at the end of this section, I will also mention some other solutions that still enable you to keep the text information in PDF device. But for Showtext, this is the price we have to pay. Yeah. So here I introduce a few of the some useful functions that you can use with the Showtext. So the first is that you can list the current registered font families. And these are the fonts. These are the family names that you can use in your R plots. And like either in the base plot or in the ggplot, you can specify the family parameter with any of the results returned by the font families. So if you are not sure like what kind of fonts you can use right now, and you can call this function. And the first 4 fonts are the built-in fonts in Showtext, so which you can directly use. And the others are like registered or installed, which I will introduce later. And as I mentioned, there is a function called font files, and you can call this function, and that will return a data frame like contains the fonts that are currently installed in your system. And you can add more search path so that it will scan more folders to list the fonts. And there is another useful function. So for example, if you want to download some fonts, if you need to use some online fonts frequently, and you don't want to download it every time, then you can use this function. And this is the typical use case, like you have found a Google font, and you are going to use it frequently. But if you use the usual like font add Google function, you have to download that font every time. And so this is not a good idea if like you don't have internet connection, or you don't want to have any delay about downloading the fonts. Then you can actually install these fonts locally to the Showtext DB package. So the Showtext package depends on another database package called Showtext DB. And if you call this font install function, it will save those fonts to a subfolder of the Showtext DB package, so that like every time you library Showtext, it will automatically scan the subfolders of that package, and it will load the packages installed in that folder. So for example, I list the font subdirectory of this Showtext DB package, and those are the built-in files, but there is an open sans font, which I have just installed using this command. And if you call the font families function, and the open sans will be there, so that you can directly use the open sans font in your plots. And in order to use this local fonts, you don't have to use the function. You can just directly like create a subfolder in that package and you put all the fonts there. So the format is that you first create a directory, for example, the open sans, and you put these files under that subfolder. And each one of them gives one style of the font family, like the bold or regular or italic and so on. But remember that because when you update a package, R will first remove the existing packages and then install the new one. So if you need to upgrade or reinstall this package, you have to first like back up the fonts that you have already installed. Otherwise, it will be removed by R. And this is the mechanism in R, and that I cannot change. So I have to give this warning to you, like sometimes like when you use like the update packages command, and someday you will see that, oh, I lost my fonts. That's because the R will remove the old folders. So you have to make the backup before you have to do any like upgrades or reinstallation. And one additional feature is that you can easily use Showtext in R Markdown. And there is only one option you need to remember. So in every code block that you want to use Showtext, you just need to give this option like fig.showtext equals true. And then you can just use all these commands driven by Showtext. But before that, absolutely, you have to first register these fonts, or you can install the fonts locally to the Showtext DB, so that like every time you library Showtext, it will be automatically loaded. But since you have the full freedom to use the fonts, you have to also be careful in choosing the fonts in presenting your plots. So like there are some notorious fonts such as the Comic Sans, and like if you use like such fonts in your plots, then probably you will make other people hate you. So just be cautious. And my suggestion is that always use the fonts that match the context of your plot or the context of your story. Just as the example I showed you in the beginning, if you are willing to showing a plot about horror movies, then absolutely you can use some interesting fonts related to that. And here I list some interesting projects that are using the Showtext. So for example, you can draw some emoji characters using the ggplot or in the base R with aid of MG font package. Because remember that the emoji is also a character. It's just using a different font. So you can like use your creativity, and like also on the right hand side there is a meme package that you can like add some interesting text to an existing plot. And there is also a check font package that provides some many different fonts motivated by the Star Trek movie. And there is also a very nice package called Thematic, which provides some automatic theming, and that also is based on Showtext and some other packages. And like you can change the style of your plots and the theme at the same time. And there is a package called GG Charts that will also like make some plots that have the business style, and it will carefully choose some fonts that match the charts you are making. And so, as I mentioned, there are some other solutions, and Showtext is not the only one. If you want to like use the popular fonts in the TDF formats, but you also want to make your text selectable and searchable, you can use the extra fonts that supports the TDF fonts combined with a PDF device. And there is one more recent package called System Fonts, and this is I think it is intended to be combined with the RAGG package. So you can also use the System Fonts to search your fonts installed in the system and use that in other graphics devices, such as the RAGG and some other packages. And here I want to say thanks to Yihui and Carson, who provided me with great help, and especially Carson, who gave me a lot of bug reports and suggestions. And you can see that this is I searched his name in the Showtext issues, and he has like provided like dozens of bugs reports, and most importantly, he helped me fix a problem that bothered me for years, because before that, the Showtext can only be used in like the built-in R graphics devices, but not in RStudio. And right now, for the new version of Showtext, you can already use the Showtext in RStudio. So that was a big progress. And that covers the first part of this presentation. That is about the Showtext package. And then we move to the next one, the Prettydoc. So I think the purpose is the same. We want to make pretty plots and pretty documents. So now you have already made some fancy plots, and you also want to include it in a nice looking document. So right now, like the R Markdown is everywhere. And if you are bored with existing themes, then you can consider the Prettydoc package. And it's also very simple. It just replaces the rendering of your R Markdown document. And it does not change much. And you just need to specify a few options in your header of the R Markdown document. And then you can have a different theme of the document. So let me first give you some gallery of the how the themes in Prettydoc looks like. So right now I have provided 5 different themes: the architect, the Cayman, HB, STR, and tactile, and Leonis. So you can click on the themes and just give you a quick overview about how this document looks like. Like you first have a table of contents box, and that directs you to the corresponding sections, and you have some syntax highlights, and you can do the math rendering, and different coloring of the tables and the section headers, other elements and codes. So let me go back. And it's similar for other themes, and just give you more options. Just quickly go through these themes. And this one. And next. And you can see that I intentionally chose different colors for different themes, so that hopefully one will match your need And this is another layout that I have a fixed column on the left, and you can scroll on the right-hand side. And to use the Prettydoc is also very simple, like especially in RStudio, you just click on the new R Markdown to create a new document. And if you have already installed the Prettydoc package, then you will see a menu in the from template, and you can select the Prettydoc. So what's special about Prettydoc? Because we know that the R Markdown already have some theming options, but what's special about Prettydoc is that it's very small. Because like when you use the default R Markdown engine to render the document, it will include the JavaScript Bootstrap, and that's a huge library. It's very comprehensive, but it's also large in size. So for the Prettydoc, I just grab some like single page template from the internet and integrate them into this package. And those CSS files and other libraries are very tiny, and like usually it's just like 100 kilobytes or somehow, and it's very small. And I think that's very convenient for the package vignettes. And that's actually the original motivation I wrote this package, because I wrote some vignette for my package, but I feel that it was too big. It's several megabytes. Like every time I click on the vignette, it cost me like some time to load the document. So I don't like that. So I wrote this Prettydoc package for myself. But later I found out, okay, like many other people are also using it, and that makes me very happy. And there are some other unique features that I will go through next. So using the Prettydoc is very simple. You just need to replace the output format. So originally this is the HTML document command, and now you replace it with the Prettydoc, and this output format is called HTML pretty. And you can specify the options here, like for the theme, as I mentioned, there are 5 themes right now. And also you can choose the highlight option. And right now you have 3 options: the GitHub, the vignette, or you don't specify anything, and that is the default by the Prettydoc engine. And you can specify some other options just as in every document you have written. And there is a unique function of Prettydoc that is to render the math expressions offline. So right now, the default R Markdown use the MathJax library to render the math expressions, and that is a huge library. And usually you cannot download the whole library offline. So when you share a R Markdown document to others, if you want to share the HTML document output from the R Markdown, and if the other people does not have internet connection, then probably they cannot view the math expressions correctly. But if you choose this engine, the math using the KTech library, then the R Markdown will download. It will not download. It will use the built-in functions, because these libraries are already packed in the Prettydoc. So when you make the HTML file and you share this file to others, other people can view all those math expressions offline without any internet connection. And sometimes this is useful, especially if you want to have consistent appearance of the document. And this is a unique feature in Prettydoc. But there is no free lunch. So right now, Prettydoc does not support all the options provided by R Markdown standard. So there is no flow table of contents, and there is no text sections, and maybe there are some other options that are missing in Prettydoc. And I have received many like issue reports in my GitHub. And I have to say that I'm not a professional designer. Like I'm not professional in CSS and JavaScript. So like if you have the experience on that, then probably you can help me to like implement these features, because I know that like these features are the blockers for many users, because they say, okay, you don't provide these options, then I'm not going to use your package. This is what I received from my GitHub issues. So please help me. And also, the Prettydoc is not the only option, and you also have other R Markdown templates like the formats or Minidown and many others. And here I list a few of them. So finally, these are the links to my packages, and feel free to like leave your comments there, or give me a star, or or send me email like if you have any like feature request. So I think that's all I want to share today. Thank you so much, and I think I can take some questions if you, or we can just chat.
All right, great. Thanks, Yixuan. That was a great talk. For those that haven't tried it, a couple months ago, I was trying to do custom fonts in R. It took forever to get it to working on Windows. And then I realized it wasn't going to work on any other operating system. And I got very sad. So I definitely need to return to that project and try and use Showtext to make my life easier.
Oh, cool.
Because yeah, it was a huge pain. We have some questions in the chat.
Yeah,
sure. Gonçalo had a question from earlier, and feel free to unmute yourself if you want to clarify your questions. I'll just read them off the chat here to get started. But back on, I think it was like slide 10, you show the raster and path functions. And so he's asking about, is that all behind the scenes? When you export your plot, you don't need to think about that, right?
Let me see. So should I go back to my slide? So which slide are you?
Slide 10.
Slide 10. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was asking, so you see how the behind the scenes, it's to collect, it's using either raster for bitmap or path for vector. So is that something that Showtext handles all on its own behind the scenes?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why you can see that without these three lines, these are the usual like plotting functions that we'll usually do. And these are all legal R functions, and you can just call them. And without registering the fonts, you can still make a plot, but that will give you the warning that, okay, this font is not available, but it will use some like default replacement. But with registering the fonts, the Showtext will do everything behind the scene, and you don't need to worry like to choose the bitmap or choose the graphics. That will automatically detected by Showtext. Like if you do a PNG, that will render in the bitmap format, and if you do a PDF or SVG, it will use the polygon solution. So that is all automatic.
Great. Gonçalo, does that answer your question? Do you want to jump in?
Let me see.
Oh, okay, no mic. Okay. All right, thank you, Gonçalo. Okay, so Patrick wanted to let you know that he's very happy to go make some memes. And Slim asked, okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So Slim's asking about that KTech. So I'll let you answer that. I have my guess, but they don't need to have Prettydoc installed, right? When you send them the HTML.
You don't. So it's just a HTML document, and it has already included every library, like the JavaScript, the fonts, and CSS, anything that is packed into an HTML. And the output HTML is completely independent of Prettydoc of R Markdown. So once the R Markdown has already been rendered into an HTML, then that's just a website file, and like you can share to anyone, and other people don't need to install anything.
Yeah. Okay, so you must embed. So you embed the KTeX source code in like a script tag.
Yeah. So the KTeX is basically some CSS file combined with the necessary fonts, and the Prettydoc does the job. It will pack every libraries, the CSS, JavaScript, and fonts into that single file.
So I'm surprised. So there has to be some limitations, right? Because MathJax is so huge. So is there things you can do with math? So does KTeX cover like most of the use cases, or why can it get away with being so much smaller?
Basically, I think it depends on the size of the libraries included in the document. Like when you do like the MathJax or using the default R Markdown, it will like pack for example, the Bootstrap library into that HTML file. But all the themes in Prettydoc are basically I derived the template from other projects, and those are some single page templates, and they have very tiny CSS or minimal JavaScript. So when you include those small files, and you only like have an extra size of like 100 kilobytes or so. Yeah. So that's
no, I think it's a great approach. It's a nice alternative to the full-fledged from the R Markdown package. Does anyone else want to jump in here?
Does Showtext work for special characters? Yes. And as I mentioned, I wrote packages first for myself, and then it turns out to be useful for some other people, because when I first create some plots using Chinese characters, and the default R graphics does not support it well. And then I found out, okay, there are some Chinese fonts, but I just couldn't use that in our graphics. So then I developed this package, and then I can like easily use it with some like non-ASCII characters like Chinese or Korean or Japanese. And if you look at my slide, sorry. If you look at the built-in families of Showtext, you can see that the sans serif mono, those are the standard fonts for Latin characters. And this one is another built-in font that is used for the Chinese, Japanese, and Korean characters. And so that's the basically my original motivation for developing Showtext. So yes, it supports special characters. And remember that emoji is also special characters. Just as like you can draw some heart characters using the ggplot, and this is because that is a special character with its glyphs contained in some font files. Any limitation if I call Prettydoc R Markdown file from Shiny? I think the most of the limitations come from the options of R Markdown. So for example, the default R Markdown format supports the float table of contents, but Prettydoc does not. So you can just try running the document and see if the output looks normal. And if it is not, then probably it means that some of the options are not supported by Prettydoc yet. So you can just you can just use you can just check out the R Markdown options and see whether it works or not. Yeah, and you only need to So in order to change your existing document, R Markdown document to Prettydoc, you only need to replace the header. So it's very easy to test Prettydoc in your own project. Just change the output format and see if the output is normal or not.
I have a question. Thank you for the presentation. It's really, really cool. Does Prettydoc work with runtime Shiny?
Runtime Shiny, I haven't done it yet. So you mean that like within Shiny you render a R Markdown document?
The other way around. Within an R Markdown document, if you specify in the YAML header, you can say runtime Shiny, and then you can use the Shiny interactivity.
Oh, I see.
Like
You
know,
mean
the
that
input
you
stuff,
embed a Shiny app in the document, right?
Basically, yeah.
I haven't tried yet, but probably it works because like in my understanding, like running Shiny under in document is basically like include another iframe tag in the HTML, and as long as it does not like affect other elements in the document. So I think the Shiny part is pretty independent from other part. That is my guess, but yeah, you can.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The Shiny documents are a little. They're a different thing. I think it could. I don't know where that's, if that's a NIDAR and R Markdown where that's implemented mostly. It might cause some trouble, so it'd be worth trying out. It's a good point, Alec. Because yeah, I don't know exactly how that gets hooked in. It might be an R Markdown package specific thing.
I see.
But it might be able to inject. I don't know if it can inject it into arbitrary output format, so it might be able to work, right? So have to test it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I have a question while we wait for someone else. So for your Showtext DB package, you've been installing it. You should install the fonts right into the package, right? So that has a lot of convenience things, especially since for a CRAN package, you're not really allowed to write to the operating system, right? But I just thought, so one thing would be like if they don't have permissions, right? If they don't have permissions to write there, that won't work. Then also you mentioned the limitation of if you update, it all gets wiped out. Yeah. So would it make sense to have an option like, a package option that says like points to a different place on their operating system where they can install them? That way, like, it wouldn't get wiped out every time you updated the package. I see.
Yeah. This is a very good one. So firstly, you have to make sure that the folder of the Showtext DB is writable. And like maybe like in some system, this is a problem. Usually like people can install a user folder, but if this is not possible, I think it may be an easier way is that like when you share your code to others, you just also include the font with this document so that you can just call like font at like the current.
Yeah, like a relative path, yeah.
Yeah. So I think like this is mostly for your own use if you want to like install the fonts locally, because you don't have to download it every time, or you can just like save the font with the under the current folder, and every time you just call the font add locally instead of the font add Google. So I think you may have different options to do.
That's another way to solve it. Got it.
And you don't have to install it. That's what I say. I'm saying, because the font add function is very fast. If you already have a local font, you can just locate it everywhere in the system, and you can directly add it immediately instead of like downloading it. And it doesn't matter like whether it is installed in the system or installed in some packages or it's under the current directory, as long as you can locate it.
And do these files tend to be pretty big? Like, would you recommend putting it under version control, or is it too big for that? Or is it?
You mean the fonts?
Yeah, the font file. Like, if I had a project where I use this font for a bunch of different documents in that project, is it worth committing it to GitHub, or is that going to slow down my pushes and pulls?
I don't know, because I think the problem is that the font files, you can consider font files as some binary files. So like every time you update it, it will completely like rewrite the whole repository. So because like right now, what I'm doing is that I mostly use the Google fonts. Yeah. So like for codes, for recording my codes, then I use the Google fonts because it's just a one command, and if you need to like make the plots, you just like download some temporary files and then make the plots. But if you want to like keep the fonts permanently, probably you have to like have some folders containing those fonts. But usually like the fonts are not updated very frequently, even if like the fonts may have different versions updates. But as long as you have a usable one, then probably you will keep it for a long time. So I think it doesn't matter if you put it in GitHub or not. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
And the other option is that you create a separate font package.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that you can easily use it. Just as the examples I showed in the presentation, there is a check font. So basically, it packs some check motivated fonts in that package, so that every time you library that package, it will be like loaded into Showtext, so that you don't update that package frequently, but you can update your package. You can update your code frequently.
Great, yeah, that's not a good solution. All right, any other questions? Anyone happen to throw runtime Shiny in with HTML pretty real quick for us? Do we know the result?
And I will share my slides to John after I do some clean up, and I will share the source code of the slides and every other code related to that. So maybe later you can look at the slides and grab the information you need. Yeah.
That'd be wonderful.
Later.
Thanks so much. Going once, twice, three times. Okay. So thank you so much, Yixuan, for getting up early and telling us about these great packages. I'm definitely excited to start playing with them. And I hope everyone else is too. And so, yeah, with that, let's end it. Thank you so much. You got lots of positive feedback in the chat there. And yeah, hope to cross paths again.